but right here, buddy, that's a tattoo.
Wow, that's David Dunham.
Fact or fiction?
Eric Dungey had no chance away. Flips it to Watkins again.
This is the Nachos and Analysis College Football Show, presented by Pump Monkey Septic Services.
Welcome to Season 2, Episode 15 of the Nachos and Analysis College Football Show. Today is Thursday, November 30th, and the Tigers get their 54th victory in Columbia and defeat South Carolina by a score of 16-7. I'm your host, Drew Archer, and I'm joined by my co-host, Matthew Johnson. How's it going, Matthew?
It's going great. Welcome to Portal Season, everybody. This is the first year of the podcast that we don't have a conference championship game to talk about, so we'll fill that in with a little bit of off-season talk, just to start the off-season, because technically the portal isn't even open yet.
All right, so as of Wednesday at 5:30 when we're recording, the Tigers have announced that they are entering the transfer portal. Mitchell Mays and then quarterback Hunter Helms. Jeremiah Trotter has already announced he's headed to the NFL. And Clemson has given its first transfer portal offer to a player since 2021. So no game to preview this week, but when we get to that segment of the show, we got some stuff to talk about. After having to deal with South Carolina fans for the last 365 days, the Tigers take their rightful place on top of the mountain here in the state of South Carolina.
Now South Carolina fans have to deal with us.
Yes. I will say this. All the Carolina people that stopped me at work last year when they beat Clemson and had things to say, not one person looked me in the eye or said a word to me Monday morning when I went into work. There was a lot of seeing me and then turning their heads and just looking at the ground as they walk by. As a Clemson fan, I'm excited to get a victory there, but it was an ugly victory. I don't know that anyone that watched that game really enjoyed watching that game. Even
Trump left at halftime.
Did he really?
Yeah. After his little on-field appearance, there were reports that the motorcade left and was heading for the airport. So I think they did that at halftime, and he left. He was out.
Well, that only confirms our theory that he loathes the city of Columbia, as we discussed last week. So couldn't bear to manage an entire football game in Columbia, South Carolina. So this week's episode, we're going to obviously review rivalry matchup with the Gamecocks. Tigers win 16-7. They do so without scoring an offensive touchdown. We'll talk about some other notable games. There were a lot of really good football games this past weekend. I think that Emily is over football with the amount of football I watched this past weekend. I watched football on Thursday and Friday and Saturday and Sunday, and so, yeah, I think she's getting a little tired of football. We're going to throw out our Twitter poll. We're going to discuss this week's Twitter poll was, what bowl opponent would you like to see Clemson paired up with? We'll get into those options and a couple listener comments as well. Fact or fiction, as always. Then we'll discuss our Pick'em contest, review how we went last week. We'll also look at our preseason win total picks. The regular season is over, and we'll look at some of the picks that Matthew and I gave out in the preseason before we give out our picks this week. We'll wrap up, as we said, with a little transfer portal talk. It's the time of year, 'tis the season. Spotify raps are coming out, so Matthew and I are going to talk a little bit about Clemson football. If it was a Spotify rap, who would the top 5 players be? What were the top 5 plays of the season? So on and so forth. So a lot to discuss despite not having a game this week. So any initial thoughts on this South Carolina game, Matthew?
Yeah, I mean, you already said it. This was an ugly game, but an ugly win, and an ugly win is better than a good-looking loss. So I feel better coming out of this game than our ugly or our good-looking loss against Florida State this year. But we made their defense look competent, and that's not really who they are. Our offense is just so bad. There was one offensive touchdown the entire game. I don't blame Trump for leaving.
The last time he saw Clemson play was a completely different scenario, though. You had Trevor Lawrence and Clemson and Joe Burrow and LSU. A lot more points scored in that game the last time he watched the Tigers.
Yeah, and I don't know. It was rough. But that brings us to my point about possibly the MVP from Saturday, Jonathan Weitz, leading scorer of both teams. He made, I think going into this game, he had made one field goal from 40 plus yards and made 3 in a row in this game, which when we really needed it, he was there. So shout out to Jonathan Weitz. I'm really happy Dabo went and pulled him out of retirement.
Yeah, as if they didn't mention it enough on the broadcast, or if you hadn't heard it at all this year, he was not enrolled at Clemson. He was not playing football.
Or he was enrolled, I believe. He was enrolled in MBA classes online, but he was living and working in Charleston.
Oh, I just assumed he was at a different school. I didn't realize he was doing a Clemson program online.
Yeah, I don't know if like the transfer rules would have worked if he was like enrolled in another university, but I know I'm pretty sure Dabo found out that he was still enrolled in an MBA program, and that's what caused him to call him out. So one last thing I wanted to mention, and if you were watching us on Twitter on Saturday, I said this a lot. Xavier Legette was overrated. But who is surprised, because it was just South Carolina fans hyping him up, saying he's the best receiver in the land, and I don't even think he's nominated for, is it the Biletnikoff? That's the wide receiver award. He's not even in the top 3 finalists. So
I was told he was the best receiver in college football, Matthew.
Maybe even in the entire world. But he dressed like he was, but he didn't perform like he was.
My thing is, I've watched very little South Carolina this year. I've heard his name throughout the year. Knew he was one of their best offensive weapons, but never had laid eyes on him. And when he comes out with his crop top on and basically booty shorts, like, that just drives me insane. Like, as a coach, why would you let a player do that? And then you go and get hit in the knees by Wiggins, and Shane Beamer wants to get up in arms and say something to Wiggins, say something to the refs. I'm sure it would still hurt, but it would feel a lot better had he had some knee pads on in that instance.
Yeah, I mean, isn't it the ref's job at the beginning of the game to make sure that all the players are like wearing proper equipment and wearing the equipment properly? That's on the refs, I think. You can't get mad at Wiggins. He was making a play. Legette, you can probably get mad at him because he chose to wear his uniform that way, but it didn't keep him out for very long, which is a good thing, at least for football. And it gave us more opportunity to shut him down.
Absolutely. And that the Tigers defense did. Let's take a look at some of these stats from this week. There's a lot of them. Clemson earned its 300th road win in school history. They moved to 73, 43, and 4 all-time against South Carolina. Those 73 all-time wins against South Carolina are the program's most against any opponent. With the win against the 5 and 6 Gamecocks, Clemson still has not lost to an opponent with a losing record at the time of kickoff since 2010, and that came against 2 and 5 Boston College.
This is a crazy stat. I've never seen this one before. I feel like this should be something that we've talked about.
Yeah, I look at these reports every week, and I don't really recall ever seeing this. I may have missed it before, but yeah, you go back 13 years since Clemson has lost to a team with a losing record. That's pretty impressive.
Very interesting. Shout out to Ross Taylor for that one.
Absolutely. Clemson is now 69-2 since 2015, when outscoring opponents in the Middle Eight. I believe this is the first time we have brought up the Middle Eight all season after we had such a huge emphasis on it last year. It doesn't take much to win the middle eight in this game because the Tigers won by a margin of 3-0.
I know we mentioned it early in the season when we were struggling and we were talking about losing the middle eight, which is something that we didn't do a lot the previous year. And that was a common occurrence in our struggles this year, was losing the middle eight. So I still don't put much stock in it. It is like a good opportunity to get a big point swing, but still interesting stat.
Yeah, and you go back to last year, Clemson was winning that middle eight a lot of the times. I think this Clemson team is more talented than last year's team. A big difference in the success last year's Tigers had was winning that crucial middle eight, going into the locker room and heading into the second half with your foot on the gas. So something that the Tigers will look to take advantage of and improve on next year. Clemson has a 155-52 advantage in its last five game winning streak in games played at South Carolina. So the Tigers have outscored Gamecocks 155-52 the last five games at Williams-Brice. Clemson surrendered only 155 yards. Its fewest surrendered in the series with South Carolina since 1989, when they also gave up 155 yards. The Gamecocks entered the week ranked 15th in the nation in passing yards per game with 293.1. Clemson held the Gamecocks to 112 passing yards in this contest. So you're pushing almost 200 yards less than the season average. Spencer Rattler was held to a 79.3 pass efficiency rating, the lowest of any start of his career. That includes South Carolina and Oklahoma. After allowing a touchdown drive in the first quarter, Clemson forced 8 punts and a turnover on downs on South Carolina's 9 remaining possessions. That was the bright spot to me. I cringed every time the offense went out there on the field, but I absolutely loved watching this defense play. I was talking with somebody this week, and the way this defense was playing reminded me of those defenses when the Tigers were on their national championship runs a few years ago. I don't recall a game this season where we have seen the physicality that we saw this past week. The Tigers were just laying Carolina's players out. I lost count of how many players left the game for South Carolina on the offensive side of the ball, just with all the hits that were going on.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It almost reminded me of, we didn't win the national championship this year, but 2015. That defense is one of my favorites of all time. There was a lot of confidence and swagger on that defense, and this was the first time in a long time, probably since 2015, that we've seen this much confidence coming out of that defensive unit. And you mentioned something else, if I can remember.
That is a great question. Oh, the amount of Carolina players on offense that left the game with injuries?
Yeah, that makes me think about, I don't know his first name, Anderson, I believe is his last name, for South Carolina, who's up for the former walk-on award. He should have left the game for the rest of the game, honestly, because that man was he was not in Kansas anymore.
And if you recall, he was the one that made the statement last week that Clemson is not they're physical, but they're not SEC physical.
Well, I mean, he probably forgot making that statement after that hit that he took. So.
I'm sure he did. If he didn't forget, he definitely regretted it. Clemson rushed for 219 yards and has now rushed for 200 yards in 3 straight games for the first time since the final games of the 2022 season. The Tigers opened the game in a big way with a scoring on a 42-yard fumble return by Khalil Barnes. It marked Clemson's second straight year opening up the South Carolina game with a defensive touchdown as Jeremiah Trotter scored the first points of last season's game on a 35-yard interception return. Khalil Barnes' touchdown snapped a 6-game streak for Clemson in which its opponents had scored first. Clemson is now 79-6 when scoring first since 2015. Barnes' touchdown was Clemson's 5th defensive touchdown of the season. That ties 1990's season for the most by a Tiger by a Tigers defense in a season since 1950.
Oh, that just reminded me. Sorry, that just reminded me. We were this close to the defensive touchdown pick six stat that we talked about last week, where we were tied with the record. But this was a fumble recovery six, and
Oh yeah.
not a pick six. But I wanted to ask you, watching it live, did you think that was a backward pass?
When it initially happened, no, I thought it was a forward pass and it was going to get called back. After watching the review, I believe it is, yes.
Yeah, I'm on the same page with you. When I first watched it live, I was like, I mean, I'm happy that we scored, but I think this one's coming back. And then as that replay, I think the camera angle on like the full sideline shot was just at an angle. So once we saw that like down the line, it was pretty obvious that it was behind the line and hit Xavier Legette right in his brick hands. So
Yeah, I did. When that happened, I was like, I don't know. I just refrained from celebrating. Emily's brother, who's a Gamecock fan, was over watching it, so I had to also be on my best behavior. And I didn't want to get up too early, so I was like, let me just wait, let them review it. We'll hold out. We'll see. I'll celebrate it though if it doesn't get overturned. And started off. It was our only touchdown of the day. So Clemson opened the game with takeaways on each of its first two possessions. The last time Clemson notched takeaways on its opponent's first two possessions was on October 1st back in 2011 against Virginia Tech. Quarterback Cade Klubnik, like the trend that we've seen the last couple years with Tiger quarterbacks, only 100 yards passing. He was 15 of 27. He rushed for a career-high 52 yards on 11 attempts. His ability to use his legs, despite not having a ton of success offensively, was the key to being able to extend some drives and keep that South Carolina offense off the field. With 112 all-purpose yards in the game, running back Will Shipley passed Jacoby Ford for ninth on Clemson's all-time leaderboard for career all-purpose yards. And then, as we talked about up top, Jonathan Weitz, the MVP of the game, recorded a career-long 50-yard field goal in the first quarter. It was Clemson's longest field goal since B.T. Potter did it last year in the ACC championship. He kicked a 52-yarder. Weitz's three field goals of 40-plus yards, tie record shared by Bob Pauling, Nelson Welch, Mark Buchholz, and Chandler Caro, with three 40-plus yard field goals in a game. So offense did not look great Saturday night, but special teams and defense played absolutely lights out.
yeah, we played the Beamer ball, and we won Beamer ball against a Beamer. So that's pretty exciting. I was really worried even still going into this game of how the special teams was going to look. I know his Aiden Swanson has been coming on strong late in the year. I know he's had a couple good games recently, so that was looking good, but kicking has still been all over the place. So to get consistency like this, and I don't know, Drew, if you saw this story come out that I think it was in a post-game interview Jonathan Weitz gave, that he talked about being a kid and playing in the backyard with his dad, and they would always, go through the scenario like, this is the game, this is the kick to win the game against South Carolina. You're on Clemson, you're Clemson's kicker, like, this is it. And it's just a really cool story that he is able to go and live that out, because I'm sure, at least me, I've had similar fantasies in my life, and unfortunately those are well past me now.
Oh yeah. Same here for me. I was either catching passes thinking I was oh gosh, what's his name? I just completely forgot his name. Derek Hamilton. Derek Hamilton. or if I was playing all-time quarterback, in my mind I was Woody Dantzler. So yeah, absolutely, it's a cool story. I did see, I heard that story. I saw his interview. He must have grown up a Clemson fan, but still did the whole recruiting thing, because I did see a picture surface this week of him years ago on a recruiting visit at Williams-Brice Stadium. So, but just the story with how bad the kicking unit has been this year. Dabo pulls them off the beach, as everyone says, and misses that field goal against Florida State. Could have won the game there. Now you don't put all the blame on him for that loss there, and then to turn around and be the reason that Clemson wins against South Carolina is pretty huge. Because just think about this: had he not made his field goals, the game would have ended tied 7-7. That would have been the most miserable overtime ever to watch.
I mean, it would have just been more field goals, I think. Like, we would have done more scoring in the overtime periods just because we were already in field goal range. Both Clemson and South Carolina, I'm saying, including in this because neither offense was getting it going. But, yeah, great game from Weitz, and it's unfortunate we have to lose him this year, but...
Yeah. We got to do some serious work with our place kicker for next season, whether that's a gun or you bring in somebody else. I not only don't follow recruiting, I definitely don't follow special teams recruiting. So I'm not sure what Clemson's working with in that department or who they got looking to come in. But I don't know. It feels good to be back on top, not to have to deal with these Gamecock fans at the water cooler every day anymore. We let them have the trophy for a year. It's back where it belongs now.
Yeah, what are we now? 7 of the last 8 or 8 of the last 9, something like that?
Yeah, something like that. Now, who would have thought during those Steve Spurrier years, all that talent they had there at South Carolina, and it would all come crashing down pretty quickly.
Very quick, almost historically quickly. I want to ask you, Drew, I might have asked you this on the podcast before, but would you trade some of those losses in the streak of 5 where we were fearing the thumb? Do you think, would you trade any of those losses knowing that we were about to go on a 7 to 8 year run against South Carolina?
So if in 2013, 14, you asked me if I'm guaranteed a win, then we don't go on that streak?
Yeah, or I guess let me say it like, if in 2010 I came up to you before the South Carolina game and said, Clemson is either going to go 50% against South Carolina the next 5 years, or for the next 10 years, actually, or we're going to lose 5 in a row and then win 7 in a row. Would you take that trade?
Yeah. I'd keep it the way it was. I'd lose those years of South Carolina if I knew that we were going to get 7, 8, whatever in a row. It sucked during that period.
Yeah, definitely. I'm on the same page as you, because just going through those years, it did get a little boring, the rivalry games towards the end, because we had the 56-7 and 30-3 or 30-0, just a bunch of games like that where we were clearly the better team, and it is boring football to watch, and it doesn't make the rivalry any more interesting, but it's great.
No, that's not boring at all. It's not boring at all. Sign me up for that every year.
Yeah, it's great to beat a rival, and especially to beat them bad to a point where they don't have anything to say to you. Remember when the only thing South Carolina could hold on over us was that they put up 35 points against us the year we won a national championship or something?
Yeah, they acted like they won their Super Bowl because they put up 35 points. Meanwhile, Clemson's going on and doing bigger and better things.
They don't bring up the fact that we scored 56 in that game.
Yeah. No, but it does feel good to be victorious again. I will say I'm going to miss it because this past week on Twitter has been fun. They've been sounding off all week. They did not like the Darius Rucker tweet I put out. They did not like the Alec Murdoch tweet. They didn't like your Xavier Legette tweet during the game. We've been hearing from them all week, and since after that game, I don't know about you, but I hadn't really heard anything from any Carolina fans. Have you?
It's been very quiet, and the stuff that has come out has just been stuff people calling Nate Wiggins dirty for trying to make a tackle on a guy that's 6 inches taller than him. I did have a lot of fun, though, going back through our mentions from the previous week and finding all these call-outs that South Carolina fans saying stuff that was going to happen during the game, and obviously none of that happened. So I had a really good time doing that, going back through receipts and calling people out. Just a great time to be a Tiger fan. Anytime you beat a South Carolina team is a good time.
Oh, yeah. We got a shout out on the Spurs Up show, post-game show. I don't know if you've ever given it a look, but a couple times this season after South Carolina has lost, I've hopped over on Chris's YouTube channel at the Spurs Up show to just watch and listen what the callers of his post-game show say. I was actually honestly really disappointed. The Gamecock fans that called in were just so defeated. Like, it wasn't even like I was waiting on people to be angry and having these asinine takes like Wiggins is a dirty player, or the Clemson paid the refs or something like that. But they were all just very downtrodden and all that. But I sent Chris a message that so we got a shout out there on the Spurs Up show, and shout out to him. Thanks again for coming on the show last week. It was, I believe, our biggest episode of season 2. So I think we had quite a few Gamecocks wander over to the podcast last week.
Yeah, so thank you to Chris for that, and always a good time to talk with him, even though he's a Gamecock, but maybe my favorite Gamecock.
All right, let's talk about notable games. I know I watched a lot of football this week, Matthew. I don't know about you, but I threw some games in here on our show notes. We got Kentucky, Louisville, Alabama, Auburn. Which of these did you have the chance to watch and enjoy?
So I didn't really get to watch much football because I was kind of busy with the holidays, and you'll probably notice a gap. If you follow our YouTube channel, you'll notice a gap in our YouTube shorts coming out, that there won't be any for a while from the South Carolina episode, just because it was really hectic. I left immediately after I finished editing Wednesday night and uploaded Wednesday night when I got to Georgia. So it was kind of hectic. I was keeping tabs on the Kentucky Louisville game because I don't know if you knew this, Drew, but some of my girlfriend's family, or most of her family, is from Kentucky, and they're Kentucky fans. So I was kind of keeping up with that. We were out at lunch with some of their family while that one was going on, but I didn't keep up with it that much. So if you have anything to tell me about it, I'm disappointed about the result, I guess is all I'll say about it.
Yeah. I'm not some ACC homer. I am going to the ACC championship this weekend, and I wanted the best game possible. And that included Louisville not losing this week and being much higher ranked than they currently are. They're down the stretch. They could not stop Kentucky at all. Even with a backup quarterback at Florida State, based on if Louisville plays the way they did Saturday, they're going to get absolutely demolished by Florida State. So I don't know what to expect for this game. So, but Kentucky wins 38-31 to win that rivalry series.
Well, I'm going to butt in here before we move on to the next game and talk about another game. I want to know if you watched it, the Florida State-Florida game, because I didn't get a chance to check any of that out. So I was wondering if you saw Tate Rodemaker, see if he's able to hold the helm while Travis is out.
I had it on the second TV to start while I was watching the Clemson game, and early on, Florida State did not look good. Florida had an early lead, and I got kind of fed up with it, and also noticed that the Georgia Tech game was quite intriguing. So I ended up turning it away. So I really don't know much. I hadn't gone back and looked at a recap for that game, but Florida State did come back after struggling early.
Yeah, that's one thing that's going to be really interesting going into this last conference championship week and bowl selection / college football playoff selection. I've seen a lot of people on Twitter giving Florida State a hard time and a hard pass because Jordan Travis got hurt, but I don't think that diminishes what the team did the entire year. He's just one player, and while it is maybe the most important position on the field in terms of game management and winning, I think Florida State still is deserving. It would be ridiculous to leave them out of the playoffs as a 13-0 conference champion just because their starting quarterback got hurt. That would be absolutely insane, and the playoff committee would lose all credibility in my eyes.
Well, what sucks about that, and I agree with you, if they win Saturday night against Louisville, they absolutely have to get into the college football playoff. There's no doubt about it. They ran the table. They're a conference champion. To my knowledge, I don't think an undefeated conference champion has ever been left out. So they absolutely should be in there. The downside of that is it hurts us, the viewer, because they're going to get in, and I don't think they're going to be able to put up a fight, and it might get ugly in whatever semifinal matchup that they get placed in.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this playoff plays out. The last year of the 4-team playoff might be the most interesting that we've had because we have kind of a controversy with like Texas and Alabama. If Alabama were to win the SEC championship, I think you still leave them out if Texas wins the Big 12 because they're both 11-1 or 12-1 conference champs. Texas has the head-to-head. So I think you still leave Alabama out, but it's going to be very interesting after this week seeing what the playoff committee decides. So sorry, that was a whole complete side tangent before we even got to the second game. But that was a good segue. Good segue into the Auburn-Alabama game. Drew, did you watch that one?
I watched every minute of it, and I was so excited, and my hopes came crashing down in a matter of seconds at the end of the game. Auburn had that game won, and I know I came on here and said it last week. I was like, I regret telling your dad at the tailgate a couple of weeks ago because I told him, I was like, Auburn's going to be in this game. They're going to give Alabama a fight. Then they turn around and lose to New Mexico State. And I'm like, maybe not. I might walk that one back. But I should have stuck with my guns because Auburn was in that game, and it was – I don't know. I mean, there's been some blowouts in this rivalry series, but I feel like more times than not, I may be wrong if I go back and look at the final point totals, but more times than not, I feel like this is a battle, no matter how bad. I mean, Alabama's usually always good, so no matter how bad Auburn is, they usually put up a fight against them. And just unfortunate mistakes. You rush to on the final play. You rush to have one guy standing in like back there around the second back would be spying, and then you have 8 guys back, and you let someone get behind you in the corner of the end zone to make a touchdown. Like, I had the under in that game personally. I don't think I gave it out last week. I took the under in that game. That ruined my season win total for Alabama. Had Auburn won that, I was angry.
Yeah, I didn't even think about the fact that you had so much implication on that game. But yeah, not even that Auburn was in that game. They should have won and were winning that game. I was watching it, and I think Be Real went off during Alabama's like final possession where they scored that touchdown, and I think at this point it's like 3rd and goal from the 30 or something, and like I took my Be Real and I was like, War Eagle, yeah. 15 seconds later, no. But it was a great time, a good game for college football. I hated the way it ended though. It felt anticlimactic, even though it was like an insane play. Just the way it happened felt like everything was building up towards an Auburn win, and it was over before you knew it, just in the blink of an eye. So,
yeah, but big win for Alabama. I will say this: we'll probably talk about it in our preview for our picks for this week. I know that they looked the way they did against Auburn this past week. Do not expect them to look that way this week. I think that they are going to be all business this week. And don't forget Georgia also struggled with Auburn earlier in the season as well. So I think this SEC championship between Georgia and Alabama is going to be one for the ages. We'll see. So, and then the Ohio State Michigan game. Nothing pleases me more to announce that Ohio State, for the third consecutive year, has lost to the Michigan Wolverines. America wins when Ohio State loses.
That's a funny way to put it. My question after this game is Ryan Day on the hot seat?
I think administratively from the people who actually sign his paychecks, no. But there's a lot of upset fans there in Ohio.
It'd be really hard to fire Ryan Day just because of what he's already accomplished at Ohio State. I think he's on pace to be like the all-time winningest coach in college football history at this rate. He just can't get over the Michigan hump, and that's a big deal in the Ohio State-Michigan rivalry. So it's kind of, I would say it's comparable to the Clemson-South Carolina rivalry, but we did give Dabo 5 years to figure out South Carolina. So maybe give Ryan Day a couple more years.
I say leave him there as long as he wants to be there, because I'm pleased with what he's put together as the head coach at Ohio State. They rack up a bunch of wins every year, but really, what have they done? What have they won? Maybe a couple Big Ten championships.
One playoff game against Clemson.
One playoff game, and hasn't won a championship since. Racking up all these wins, not anything. That reminds me also, you brought up South Carolina. Reminds me of them during that early streak in the early 2000s. They got a lot of wins, but they didn't accomplish anything.
They won the SEC West or East or whatever division they're in.
Yeah, the East. But I'm going to steal this quote. I don't know if it's original to him, but Dave Portnoy, big Michigan fan, Michigan alumni, he always says that Ryan Day was born on third base, but tells you he hit a home run. And I think that's a perfect way to describe Ryan Day. He inherited a great program with tons of facilities and money and athletes, and has not been able to get over the hump and do anything about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you go back to our this is a callback, so this is all only for our like day one listeners. Probably our first episode ever, last year preseason episode. I think I picked Ohio State to win the national championship. They had the talent to do it last year. You had Justin Fields coming into his last year. He had a couple years in the system to get with the offense. Crazy receivers with Olave, Smith, and Jigba. It was their year. Like, if they didn't do it last year, Ohio State isn't winning another natty for 20 years. So I like that. Is a good point, though. I don't take anything Dave Portnoy says about Ohio State. I take it all with a grain of salt, I guess, is what I'll say. I don't know if you saw, actually, this is a side note, but Dave Portnoy had Connor Stallions have a brief cameo in their like live pregame show of that game. Did you see that?
Did he really?
Yes.
No.
He didn't say anything, but he like walks onto the set and like delivers something and then just walks off and like.
I saw the video. Him and Tom Brady were FaceTiming during the game, and then afterwards. Jim Harbaugh called him after the game. I don't know. The Big Ten has suspended him for the final 3 games. Is he allowed to coach in the championship game this week?
From what I understand, yeah. But I don't think they were punished enough. Like, unless they're going to try to retroactively come back and like take away these wins, I don't see how you let him come back this season, at least. Harbaugh. Speaking of Harbaugh.
All right, so a lot of notable games, a lot of rivalry games this week. A big weekend of football, Turkey, Thanksgiving. I saw this on Twitter this week that calls for plumbers increased by like 900% the day after Thanksgiving. So not only plumbers, but I'd imagine you get some septic tank issues. You got a lot of people at the house, kids flushing things down toilets and drains they're not supposed to. It's unfortunate, but stuff like that happens this time of year. So if you are in the need for septic service or think you might be and want someone to come give you an honest opinion, give Pump Monkey Septic Service a call. They're owned and operated by Clemson alumni Alan Powell. They service the upstate. You can reach them at 864-710-2211. They're on Facebook. They're on Instagram. They do good work here in the upstate of South Carolina. So if you have an issue, give them a call at 864-710-2211. When the dump's funky, call Pump Monkey.
Twitter polls.
All right, this week's Twitter poll, or X, whatever you want to call it, is what bowl opponent would you like to see Clemson paired up with? Also included, if other, leave a comment. I don't know that we got any others. We had a pretty solid list of teams here. Again, if you don't follow us on Twitter, that's the way you participate in this poll, at nachos_analysis. So give us a follow, participate each week in our vote, and get your voice heard. So I went off list. I believe I found them Sunday morning after all the rivalry games were over. Looked at the four most possible opponents for the Tigers in a bowl pairing. So the options were Oregon State, Southern Cal, Oklahoma State, and Tennessee. I did see some projections with LSU, but overall these are the four that I'm seeing a lot of, and three of the four I'm just now realizing teams.
I was literally just about to say that.
Sorry to steal your thunder.
At least two of the four schools on this list are very close to Clemson Orange, and three of the four are Orange mainly.
Yeah, and I may be wrong with this because it's been a long time since I've been in elementary school art, and I've forgotten most of what I've learned about color theory. What happens if you mix red and yellow? Does that make orange?
Yeah.
Southern Cal, they may not be orange, but if you mix them together, you got an all-orange matchup here. So Oregon State, Southern Cal, Oklahoma State, Tennessee. Which of these matchups would you like to see in a bowl game, Matthew?
See, I went with the crowd here. I guess you haven't given out the results yet, but I'll spoil it. I went with the crowd here and went with Oregon State just because of the storyline. And I think it'd be a good opportunity for our young defense, especially. I'm expecting a lot of opt-outs coming for the bowl season. As of recording this episode, we only have one with Jeremiah Trotter and Mitchell Mays, and Hunter Helms. I guess that's three technical, but one like specific opt-out that he's declaring for the draft and not playing in the bowl game. And I'm sure Oregon State will have similar, like, we played Iowa State last year and they didn't have Breece Hall. So it'll be a good opportunity just for our younger guys to get good experience against another set of ones. Oregon State would be great just because it'd be fun to play against DJ again. But if DJ declares for the draft this year and opts out, then I'd want us to play Southern Cal out of these teams, because I don't know if Clemson's ever played Southern California, and outside of the DJ Uyunglele storyline at Oregon State, there's no other reason I want to play them. So my second choice would be Southern Cal.
In Southern Cal, you get the Riley matchup there as well.
Oh yeah, I didn't even think about that.
For content purposes, I would not mind seeing Oregon State. Because just the content leading up to that would be very interesting. A lot of storylines with DJ and Clemson, and my thing is the reason I did not go with Oregon State. One of the reasons is you just lost your head coach. They're going to be one of two teams in the Pac-12 next year, so expect a lot of transfers out. And opt-outs for this bowl game. So I don't think whoever Oregon State plays, you're not getting the true Oregon State team. I also I don't know. I see it as a lose-lose for Clemson. If you win, you beat a team without a head coach, a lot of a lot of opt-outs. If you lose to the guy who you put a lot of blame on last season, and it puts a sour taste in fans' mouth heading to the offseason. I voted for Tennessee here because I want revenge on last season's bowl game in the Orange Bowl. I need Cade Klubnik to redeem himself if that's possible, or just get a win in some way against the Volunteers. I'm not a big Tennessee fan as of late. Between what happened in the football season last year and the baseball regional in Clemson against Tennessee, I want to win against Tennessee. So that was my vote there.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I do majorly disagree. I don't like Tennessee either, but I don't think it would be very interesting to see us come up against them. I know you have a lot more hatred for them because of the baseball situation that happened, losing to them in, was it Super Regionals, and then they take our best player through the transfer portal. That's awful. Like, I understand that on your side, but other than that, I don't really care to see Tennessee again. I don't put too much stock. I'm expecting a lot of opt-outs for our team this year too. Like you were mentioning for the Oregon State team, like I'm not expecting Nate Wiggins to play in the bowl game, or Jalen Phillips might still be on the injured list or opt out just for health reasons going into the NFL Combine. So you're not even going to get the full Clemson team going into bowl season, but I think it'd be any of these teams really would be a good test, just to get some good experience for the young guys.
I'm with you. I think it would be cool to play Southern California. But to your point about opt-outs, there's one crucial piece of this defense that has announced he is not opting out, and that is Xavier Thomas. He said he's going for one last ride. So excited to be able to watch Xavier Thomas one final time, and whoever Clemson gets matched up with this season. So
that takes away that's its own storyline. Like, that makes me not even need the Oregon State matchup in the bowl game, because Xavier Thomas has been here forever, and he came in highly rated recruit from South Carolina that went to IMG, super high rated recruit, dealt with injuries. COVID really hit Xavier Thomas hard, and that really set his career back. So I'm happy to see that Xavier Thomas is coming back. I don't necessarily agree with it. If I were his dad, I'd probably tell him to not play. But I'm happy as a Clemson Tiger fan that we're going to have him one last time.
Yeah. Again, the options were Oregon State, Southern Cal, Oklahoma State, and Tennessee. The way it shook out, Oklahoma State got the fewest votes with 8% of the vote. Tennessee coming in second with 21%, Southern Cal 33%, and as you mentioned, Oregon State wins the poll with 38%. We did get a couple comments on this. Tim Jones gets in and says, the prescription to anyone's offensive struggle is a game against USC. I could not.
I'm going to butt in. I'm going to butt in right here, and I got this notification on my phone of Tim Jones replying this, but I didn't see what tweet it was in response to. I thought he was just tweeting this out at us, and I read it as South Carolina, and I was like, this guy did not watch the game on Saturday.
I thought the same thing too, and then I went back and looked. I'm like, oh, okay, he's talking about the real USC. Nicholas Olson also gets in. He says nobody who actually wants to watch a good football game wants us to play Oregon State. People only want it for the story, and it just wouldn't be a good look either way, win or lose. Win equals DJ haters out in force. Lose, DJ wasn't the problem, out in force. Give me SoCal. So thank you to everybody who got in on this week's Twitter poll. The episodes are dwindling down. We got championship weekend for conferences this weekend. We got bowl season coming up, the final 14 college football playoff game. So
Fact or fiction?
Fact or fiction, Clemson's November success changes Dabo's offseason moves.
I really don't want to say this, but I'm saying fact. I hope Dabo at least realizes that this team was not ready in August. So if there is no office coaching changes this offseason, I hope Dabo at least realizes that what they did preparing for this season was not enough, and that we need to be more prepared come August 2024. So I'm saying fact reluctantly, but I don't think I'm going to be optimistic and say it's not a sign of future progress.
I'm gonna add that Clemson was not ready in August, September, or October.
You're not wrong.
I'm gonna say fiction here. Had he not made the move with Brandon Streeter last year, I probably would agree with you and say fact. But I think no one saw that move coming. This was somebody who was a Clemson man through and through, and no one thought Dabo would make a move like that. You got a staff full of Clemson men, former players, friends, that sort of thing, and the last few years have not been up to par. So I'm going to say fiction. It will not change his decisions this offseason. Fact or fiction, Jonathan Weitz was Clemson's MVP Saturday night.
I am going fact on this one. I think it's guaranteed him, like I mentioned earlier in the episode, but leading scorer of the entire game, both teams, and just his consistency that he was able to produce for this game that he hadn't done in any other game. It's very impressive, so I think he deserves... I saw somebody talking shit about this phrase on Twitter this week, but give him his flowers. Like, he deserves his respect. He deserves his respect for what he did in this game against South Carolina, so I think he deserves the MVP. If it wasn't him, I think it's Khalil Barnes who scored the touchdown, but not even because of that, just because of the way he was able to hang in coverage with South Carolina's talented receiver group. A lot of the times when Nate Wiggins we would run a zone, or Nate Wiggins would be lined up against Xavier Legette, and they'd run a route that would switch that matchup and put him on Khalil Barnes. Every time Khalil Barnes was right on him and making a play on the ball. So big shout out to him, and we'll be talking about him later in the episode too.
I think he only gave up one pass Saturday night against South Carolina. I may be wrong in saying that. He is who I would say would be second place in this MVP boat, but I do agree with you. Fact, Jonathan Weitz was Saturday night's MVP. Not just the 9 points, the 3 40-plus yard field goals, but just the growth that you've seen through him this season, and in a big-time moment like that, when the lights are shining, sandstorm is a storm, and he focuses and gets the ball there through the upright. So MVP, according to Nachos and Analysis, is Jonathan Weitz. All right, fact or fiction, Williams-Brice Stadium is an overrated atmosphere.
I'm three straight facts for me this week. I'm going fact. The fan base is loud. I've been to one game in my entire life in Williams-Brice, and it is loud, but it's always for a very short period of time. This crowd can get out of it just as quick as they got into it, because they obviously know what their football team is, and they're not trying to fool anybody. You put a couple scores on them or get them to go 3 and out 2 times in a row, that crowd quiets down. So fact, it is overrated, and it's very easy to get them quiet.
There can be a couple things true at the same time. I think that stadium can be just as loud as any of the stadiums in the country. I saw a quote from former Alabama quarterback Freddie Kitchens. He said it's the loudest environment he's ever played in. And he played in the SEC. He's seen a lot of loud environments. He played in Bryant-Denny Stadium.
I'd put Mississippi State up there because of the cowbells. Well, I'm sorry. I'm going to try to complete sidetrack you. I hope you remember where you were going with this, but I don't know. I don't know if you saw the video of Mike Elko. No, he was College Station. Jeff Levy, getting off the plane in Starkville, and there are so many fans out there ringing cowbells. I would be like, if that was me, I would turn around and get right back on the plane.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, that's one of the most obnoxious things in college football, and how it is allowed, I'm not really sure, because artificial noisemakers are prohibited in college football. But the South Carolina, their fans are probably, and you could disagree if you want to, but I think that South Carolina fans might be one of the most dedicated fan bases in all of college football. They've seen a lot of bad football. They show up every week. However, they're very dedicated. They can be very loud. When it comes to game day, they don't have a lot of patience. Like you mentioned, you put up a couple scores early on them. If you're somewhere else, LSU, Clemson, Alabama, Oregon, some of these places that are known for being really, really loud, what makes them different, their fans hang around and still provide that 12th man to assist the team throughout the game, even if they're down. And that's one thing that South Carolina doesn't do. It can be cool. You got the dog and pony show with the little chicken riding in on a little choo-choo train at the beginning, and that's cool and all. But I may have misspoke there. I do not think it's cool. I may have been saying that tongue-in-cheek there. But, yeah, it's I don't know. People rag on Clemson. Oh, you rub a rock. You run down a hill. Show me where running down a hill has been done anywhere else in college football. On the other hand, show me college football stadiums that are known for literally playing a song and getting loud. What is so special about that? Like, seeing Sandstorm was cool. You wave a little towel around. But, I mean, that's not unique. Everybody's just getting excited for a song. Every concert goer ever has done the same exact thing. That's not unique. That's not a cool tradition. So, fact, Williams-Brice Stadium is overrated. The one time you went was also the same year that I went. We sat in different sections, but where I sat at that game, that was 2015, I believe. 17, yes, because then we lost to Alabama in the playoffs the next 2 games later. I sat in approximately the same seats at Williams-Brice Stadium as I do at Clemson, and it was nowhere near as loud. Even during the sandstorm, the entrances, all that stuff, it was not as loud as Clemson. So, not impressed, Carolina.
Weekly picks.
All right, let's review our Week 3 pick'em. We're dwindling, as I mentioned there with the Twitter polls. There's only a few left, but a big week for the two of us. I remember commenting to you last week when we were giving out our picks, how hard it was to pick games in these rivalry matchups because they're always just so difficult to gauge. So Matthew and I both go 3-1 on the week. So lots of points gained. However, with us tying, did not allow any room for you to catch any ground.
Yeah, how come as soon as I start getting picks right, you start tying every week and just are stonewalling the comeback? You're not doing anything to extend the lead at this point. You're just stonewalling the comeback. But I did want to point out, this is 2 weeks in a row. I think we're 12-4 in the last 2 weeks of picks. I just want to let all the listeners know that me and Drew are smart and are good at our jobs.
Yeah, I'm at the end of the year. I'm going to do the math on all this, but if you've stuck with us this year with our picks, you will have had a profitable college football season. Now the problem is, I give out these picks each week, and then I also go rogue and make random other picks on my own personally. And more times than not on those rogue picks, I lose. So I just need to stick with the 4 I give out here each week. But season totals, 33 for me, 24 for Matthew. So still a 9-point lead heading into conference championship weekend. I did want to point out with the regular season being over, Matthew and I each gave out, I believe, 4 picks week 1 in the preseason. So 2 of them have come to a conclusion. Matthew and I each gave out an over and an under on season win totals. Matthew gave out Wake Forest over 6.5 wins. I gave out South Carolina over 6.5 wins. Neither of those cashed. So poor seasons for the Gamecocks. And then Matthew and I for under, I gave out Alabama under 10.5, which made me all that more furious in that Alabama loss or Auburn loss. And then Matthew gave out his under with Texas under 9. No bonus points for our week 1 picks.
Yeah, and I guess we still have the opportunity to do playoff projections. I know that's our only other preseason picks that are left that are not over yet, but I don't think Wake Forest got close. I think they might have ended 4-8 or 5-7, so that wasn't really close. Yeah, and then South Carolina was that 1 win away from, or actually, I didn't realize that the season total was 6.5. So even with the win against Clemson, they weren't getting it. They were making bowl eligibility, but I guess since we're counting these as regular season picks, 6.5 out of the question. And then Alabama, Texas, they played each other, and it kind of made the difference in our picks is that one game.
Yep. That one was huge. I can't remember who you picked for your college football playoff teams, but I believe I still have 4 or 2 of the 4 alive. I think I have Georgia and Michigan in there in my playoff picture. So both of those still alive.
Yeah, I unfortunately did not pick Michigan for my Big Ten pick. I know I picked Georgia. I think I picked Oklahoma, which is out, and not sure with my other 2 picks of who I picked, but I think I picked Clemson because I had in the preseason picked Clemson to go 12-0, which we don't want to talk about it right now.
All right, so let's forget all that. We've been doing well in our weekly picks. So, Matthew, what is your favorite for this week's conference championship matchup?
My favorite pick this week, I am going with the ACC championship game. Florida State favored by 2.5 right now against Louisville. We talked about it earlier, but I don't think the Jordan Travis effect is as big as media has been making it out to be. And after Louisville's performance last week, I'm not confident in their abilities. So Florida State by more than a field goal.
Smart pick. The ACC championship, Florida State minus 2.5. I agree with you. I don't think you're going to see a quote unquote drop off that's going to be detrimental to Florida State in this matchup. I don't. Once the Seminoles get into the college football playoff is when I think you're going to see the biggest effect of losing your starting quarterback.
Yeah, true. And I honestly am not on the boat or saying that like Florida State is going to flounder in the playoffs with Tate Rodemaker. They're going to have a lot of time to get him accustomed with the ones and on that timing. So, and they still have a lot of talent everywhere else on the roster. So, it'll be interesting to see. But for underdog picks, I really hope we don't go 4 for 4 on ties, but I'm going over to the Big Ten. Iowa plus 23.5 versus Michigan. Iowa has too good of a defense, I think, to lose by 24 points to anybody.
We did not match, so don't have to worry about this with the underdog. I'm sticking with the SEC in this pick, Georgia versus Alabama. Alabama is a 6-point underdog to Georgia. I don't think the Alabama team we saw last week on the Plains in Auburn will be the same team we see in Atlanta on Saturday night against the Bulldogs. I think we're in for a fight here, and I think Alabama will keep it close.
Yeah, I think they're going to keep it close and put a lot of points on the board, which is why I went for my over Alabama UGA plus or minus 45.5 at the time of the pick. I think these games with a lot of defense can sometimes go towards the offense because if you think back to that, what was it? I don't remember the year, but it's the year where Devontae Smith made the game-winning touchdown catch in overtime against Georgia in the SEC championship game. That was a high-scoring affair. I don't think defense is going to win out in this game. I think most talented offense wins, but I'm cheering for points nonetheless.
I'm going to make one correction there. You said 45.5, over under at 54.5.
Sorry, I thought I said 54.5. Sorry.
No, you're good. And then for my over, I am going with the game you have already picked. I'm going Michigan versus Iowa over under at 35. Iowa's been playing a lot of low scoring games lately. However, Michigan's going to put up some points this week.
I was really scared about that because I am full on the train of unders on Iowa. So moving on to under, I did not copy the full score onto the sheet, but it's the Pac-12 final Pac-12 championship of the year or of ever. Oregon, Washington, that's plus or minus 66 and a half. And that's a lot. I think when they met earlier in the season, they combined for 68 or 69 total. But just betting anything at this point.
I am going to disagree with some of your previous comments here. For my under, I'm going with Georgia, Alabama. There are times when you have two teams with really good defenses. You saw it a lot in those Clemson Alabama matchups in the college football playoff where both had solid defenses, but they put up a ton of points. I don't see that happening here in this matchup. I see this being a little bit more of a defensive battle. And you have the under at 54.5. So I'm going to change my line because earlier today I saw it at 54.5. Yeah, I think that one's going to be a little bit lower scoring than what people expect.
Yeah, I mean, I'm honestly fine switching if you want to take the 54.5 and I take the 53.5 on the under just because it's going to benefit, or I mean on the over because it's going to benefit me to have the lower number and benefit you to have the lower number. Since we got the lines at different points, might as well give one of us the advantage for that. So switching my pick to over Alabama UGA plus 53.5. Yeah, that's a good point though. I don't think you're wrong because Georgia's offense isn't prolific by any means. Neither is Alabama's, but I'm trusting in the athleticism on both of those rosters to be able to get some points up on the board. And if not, the defenses are going to score.
Yeah. To your point, Georgia has struggled early on in games a lot this season to get points on the board, especially early in the season. And I didn't really look at their point totals throughout the year. I did look at Alabama's, and they've had almost as many low-scoring games as they had just tons of points. So that's kind of where I'm at with that pick there.
Yeah, Alabama had a weird season because if you remember starting off the season, they were benching Jalen Milroe and just doing crazy stuff, losing games and being in way too close a games. So let's go ahead and move on. I had an idea today. If you're listening on the day this episode is released, yesterday, Wednesday, the 29th, is the day that Spotify Wrapped / Apple Music, I don't know what Apple Music calls it, but it came out today. So I thought it would be a good idea for us to do a Clemson Wrapped. And instead of doing top artists, do top players of the year. And I think this is eligible to stretch back to the Tennessee, or did Tennessee bowl game happen before New Year's? I can't remember. I'm just so used to us playing bowl games after New Year's Day.
I can't remember if that was in this year or not.
Well, either way, we kind of limited this to everything that happened in 2023, and then instead of songs on the Spotify Wrapped, we did top 5 plays. So we have top 5 players, top 5 plays of the year, kind of the Nachos and Analysis Clemson Wrapped of 2023. I'll start off. Our first player we want to give honors to is TJ Parker, true freshman, number 12 at defensive end. We came in, he didn't even start the season, but by week 3 or 4, he was the number 1 guy, and he is the number 1 guy at defensive end, pass rusher going into next season. Had an incredible season. I am just so impressed with his talent level at the level, like where he is at in his career. So TJ Parker gets the first shout out.
Second shout out we got here, Phil Maffa. His impact on this team has been huge this season. Matthew, I know you pointed out before we started recording, he did have some fumble issues, especially earlier in the season, but the team really leaned on him, and then also Shipley towards the end of the year when we really needed it because our quarterback here was struggling. But Phil Maffa has been a huge asset, especially the game. Was it North Carolina that Shipley was out that he just went off? But Phil Maffa, a huge season here at Clemson.
Yeah, it was UNC or Georgia Tech. I can't remember, but exactly what you said. Phil Maffa had those struggles early in the season, but it's hard to leave him off of a list like this because thinking about those last few games down the stretch when we went on our winning streak, we were riding Phil Maffa's back. So I'm sure he needs a chiropractor after this season. So moving on, number 3 top player of 2023, I am nominating Jalen Phillips. I was super impressed with Jalen Phillips this season. I didn't have high expectations for him coming in. He has great size for the safety position, but I just hadn't seen it on the field yet. But he was all over the field this year making plays and impact plays when you needed it the most. Jalen Phillips was there. It really sucks that he got hurt down the stretch of the end of the season because we probably could have beat South Carolina they wouldn't have scored that first touchdown, I'll say, if Jalen Phillips was in the lineup. So Jalen Phillips deserves everything that comes to him after this incredible season he had for us.
Yeah, and talk about impact plays. This next guy, maybe the most impactful this season on the defense, Nate Wiggins, especially down the stretch this season. He has had play after play after play. He's shut down virtually every receiver he's gone up against this weekend. And I remember standing on the field.
This year, not just this weekend.
Yeah, this entire year. Yeah, I remember standing with Faxon on the field at Bank of America Stadium last year at that ACC championship. He takes a shot, he lands weird on the ground, he picks up an interception, runs it back for a touchdown. The very next play, he's tough. After that play, I don't know if we ever discussed this on here, if I ever told you, he got injured. You could tell he was shaken up on that play last year, and then he returns that interception for a touchdown, comes back to the sideline. Everyone's celebrating, patting him on the back, jumping on him. Moments later, just goes and pukes on the sideline. He's an absolute warrior, and you saw more and more of that this year. So shout out to Nate Wiggins.
Oh, yeah. Big. You cannot talk about the 2023 Clemson season without talking about Nate Wiggins. But you also can't talk about the 2023 Clemson football season without our number 1 player, of the 2023 season, Tyler from Spartanburg. Clemson went 4-0 or 5-0 after Tyler from Spartanburg confronted Dabo about his, complacency, and he's making so much money, but your product on the field isn't anything. Tyler from Spartanburg inspired that change. He really brought it to us. So thank you to Tyler from Spartanburg. We owe our season to you. I am expecting a big contract offer for you coming this offseason.
You could say that his impact was minimal. You could say that Dabo doesn't even think about it, was of no concern to him, but you can also point to Clemson being undefeated since that phone call. So I say the facts are in the corner of Tyler from Spartanburg. Tyler, if you are a Nachos and Analysis listener, kudos to you. You're probably not. I DM'd you. You didn't respond back. So, but shout out to Tyler from Spartanburg.
He did make a statement, though, right after his call that he was only doing an interview with T.I. So I don't blame him for not responding to us. I'm sure he was getting hounded at that moment. So let's move on from top 5 players of the year to the top 5 plays of the year. And I'm going to start it off. I didn't really put these in order, but they kind of are in an order. I'm going to put number 5 at Hamp Green's one-handed catch on the sidelines. I believe this was against Syracuse, ? I can't remember exactly, but he was running like a little 5-yard out route towards the opposing sidelines, made an incredible catch, and kept that drive alive. So really just a ESPN top 10 play.
Absolutely. We go from talking about Tyler from Spartanburg to Tyler Brown's one-handed catch in front of the student section there against Georgia Tech. One of the most insane catches that I've ever seen, ever, let alone in person. And as you pointed out in the week that followed, the content that Clemson's social media team put out, that video gets me every time, where they just zoom in on everybody in the crowd's face as they're just in shock of what they just saw. But has to be one of the top plays of 2023.
Yeah, if we're doing this in order, I think that one is top 2 minimum. But we're doing these top 5 plays in no order. So the next one I'm going to mention is DeMonte Capehart. I don't remember the exact down and distance situation. I believe it was a 3rd down and 3rd and short against Notre Dame. And DeMonte Capehart abuses Notre Dame center, pushes him back 3 to 5 yards off of the ball, and makes the tackle on the running back on this play. Just incredible nose guard stuff. Nose guard play that you don't see in the NFL. This is really incredible stuff. And DeMonte Capehart abusing interior offensive linemen is not a fluke on this play. It happened often throughout the season. So, but this one in particular was a big moment in our season. So, DeMonte Capehart, number 19. Thank you.
Next, we have someone we've talked about on the show already today. His impact in the victory against South Carolina this week, Khalil Barnes. Opening play of the game, fumble recovery for a touchdown. No South Carolina fans, it was not a forward pass. That set the tone for this defense. And then you could even argue the very next defensive play where he picks off a pass could be up for a nomination for top 5 plays of the year. But Khalil Barnes set the tone for this defense and really just put a beat down on South Carolina Saturday night.
Yeah, to come in as a freshman and make the impact that he made on our defensive side of the ball is incredible. And he was all over the field and honestly reminded me of a more refined skill-wise, what's his name? Isaiah Simmons. Like athletic, all over the field, blitzing, in coverage. He can do it all. I don't remember Isaiah Simmons being this refined as a freshman at Clemson. It took him a while to get to the point that he was going into the NFL draft. So Khalil Barnes has a bright future ahead at Clemson. And real weird side note, at Tiger-Rama this year, Khalil Barnes and KG, Kylan Griffin, did Gangster's Paradise as like a karaoke song at Tiger-Rama in front of thousands of students. So, and they actually did a really good job of it. So one of my best pictures I took during my internship is of Khalil Barnes singing Gangster's Paradise.
He's a performer as well. Add that to the resume.
Yeah, he performs on Friday nights and Saturday nights. So can't wait for him to do that on Sunday nights as well. But I think me and Drew unanimously agreed on this as top play of the year for Clemson. Nate Wiggins chase down, force fumble versus UNC. This was a point, we talked about it last week, but this was a point where North Carolina was about to go up 14-0 on the road at Clemson, and we were about to have no answers. But Nate Wiggins starts his dead sprint from the 40-yard line and catches up with this runner who is already 10 to 15 yards ahead of him, strips him at the very last second at the 1-yard line, forcing a touchback, gives Clemson the ball back. I don't know if we end up scoring on that drive, but just the fact that we stopped them from going up 2 scores on us early in that game was a really big momentum changer of how that game went. And I think if we go down 14-0 at that point, we don't win or even come close to winning. So that is a huge play from the season. I think probably the biggest impact play of our season.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. The speed that he showed there, I think we talked last week, was like 22 miles an hour. Did not give up on the play, reached the runner like right at the very last moment, right before he crossed the goal line, and turned around that football game, because the momentum in that moment was originally called. It was called a touchdown. The momentum, you could feel it. It was all in North Carolina's hands, and within a second, as they review that and overturn it, completely changes and gives Clemson the confidence they need to finish out and win that game there at home. So a lot of great players, a lot of great defensive plays that we've talked about here.
Well, there wasn't really a lot of great offensive plays this year.
Yeah, true. All right, so before we wrap up, just a couple things. As we said at the top, we're recording this on Wednesday. So as of today, 2 Tigers have announced intent to enter the transfer portal. I believe it opens on Monday. That would be quarterback Hunter Helms and offensive lineman Mitchell Mays. Jeremiah Trotter, as you mentioned, Matthew, has announced his intent to enter the NFL draft, and he is going to be opting out of the bowl game. And then Clemson has given out its first transfer portal offer since 2021 to Alan Heron of Shorter University. Ironically, Shorter University, this man is 6'6", 310 pounds. I saw somebody on Tiger Illustrated point out today, you can't teach 6'6". So big body, and we'll see. Fingers crossed, maybe he will choose Clemson. He's got probably about 6 or 7 other offers. Clemson, of note, is the biggest offer of the universities he's gotten offers from so far. But again, thank you for joining us for episode 15. Next week, we are going to review the conference championships games. The bowls will be announced. We'll preview some bowls, give out some picks for some of the early bowls, and I'm sure we will have a lot more transfer portal topics to talk about, because, as I mentioned, it opens Monday. So I think the closer we get to Monday, the more announcements we're going to see. But thank you again for joining us, and we'll talk to you next week. Peace.
Peace. I'm getting hungry. I'm going to have a bowl of cereal for dinner.